Last year, my girlfriend and I broke up. We dated for a couple of months, but she was just way too high maintenance for me. After we broke up, she continued to call me though. I let her know that I was not pleased by this, and I asked her to leave me alone. She would keep calling me and texting me, and eventually I had to block her. Fast forward about a month. I got home from work one day to find one of the front windows to my house was smashed. Shattered glass was everywhere. I thought someone must have broken into my house. I walked inside ready to defend myself. The house looked normal and nothing was messed up though. I walked through the house one room at a time to find that there was nobody else in there except me. Nothing appeared to be stolen either. I had to get the window replaced, which costed a lot of money. Then, about a week later, I left my house one morning to go to work. When I got to my car, I saw that all the tires on it had been slashed. Now I knew that these two incidents had to be connected, and I immediately suspected my ex-girlfriend. I ended up unblocking her and accusing her of the incidences that happened at my house. But she never responded. I had to get one of my friends to give me a ride to work. After work, I reported to the police the things that happened at my house. That night, I woke up to hear the sound of glass breaking. I thought to myself, here we go again. This time, I was pretty angry, and I got up and ran out to my living room to see another window completely smashed. I ran outside to see if I could see anyone, but there was nobody there. I called the police and told them that once again one of my windows had just been smashed. They said they would send someone out. When they showed up, they examined the scene and asked me some questions. Then they began to look around my house. The officers went down to my basement, and when they came back up, they had my ex-girlfriend. She had broken in and was hiding in my basement. I didn't even know she was in the house, and I assumed she left. It was a big relief to know those things would not happen anymore. I'm just glad the police found her in my basement, because I don't know if she had plans to harm me or not. Recently, me and my girlfriend broke up. It was a mutual agreement because we felt things just weren't working out. We only dated for about a month. She always had a bit of a temper, and that's something that I won't miss at all. About 2 or 3 weeks after we broke up, I received a text from her one evening. She said that she really wanted to talk to me and to meet her at a nearby park at 10 p.m. It was a park that we would go to sometimes together, and I liked it because it was down by a woods and looked very nice. I didn't know what she wanted, but I was guessing she would want to get back together. I did not want to get back together with her, so I was preparing to tell her that and thinking of ways to be nice about it. I walked to the park from my house at about 9:45. It was a nice night out, warm with a little breeze. The park was very dark once I got there. I texted her that I was there, and I asked where she was. She told me she was in a corner by a picnic table in front of the woods. I walked over there, and when I arrived, I did not see her. I called out her name. There was no answer. I took out my phone to call her. Just then, I heard leaves rustling behind me coming from the woods. I looked behind me and saw a large man wearing a ski mask emerge from the woods. I am 6 feet tall, and this man was very big. He had to be at least 6'5". He walked over to me. I turned to run away. I got about 10 feet before I felt the man tackle me to the ground. I tried to defend myself, but I was honestly no match for the masked man. He punched me several times and slammed me into the ground. He then took my wallet and my phone as well as my keys. He hit me a few more times and then ran away. I lay there in pain for a minute before I was able to get to my feet and walk home. I wasn't badly hurt, just a little banged up. I ended up going to my neighbor's house because my keys and phone were stolen. They called the police, and I explained the situation to them. A locksmith had to be called for me to get into my house. The police were eventually able to track down my ex-girlfriend, and it was found that she intentionally lured me into the woods to get me robbed. The man and her were arrested, but I never got my wallet, keys, or phone back, and they had to be replaced. A couple of years back, I dated a girl named Christine. We dated for about 5 months, then broke up. We split on good terms and even remained sort of friends. When I say that, I don't mean that we hung out or anything, but we occasionally would text and see how each other were doing. I was glad that there were no hard feelings between us and that things were fine. One day, I received a text from her. She told me how she was moving and there was a gap in the leases of her apartments and some other complicated stuff. She said she needed a place to stay and asked if she could stay at my place for a couple of days. I was a little hesitant, but being the nice guy that I am, I said yes. I thought it might be kind of awkward, but I figured that I would be working most of the time and I wouldn't have to talk to her much. When the time came, she arrived. We talked briefly and things seemed pretty good. She was staying on my couch and I would sleep in my bedroom. I went to work, and when I came home that night, we talked again very shortly, and then I went into my room. I hung out in there for the rest of the night. I went to bed at around 11 p.m. I usually sleep really well, but on this night, I woke up and could see that everything was still dark. I closed my eyes to fall back asleep, but I felt as though I wasn't alone. I remembered that Christine was staying with me, and I looked up to see her standing at the end of my bed just staring at me. She had a really mean look on her face. It was like a look of hate. I asked her if she was all right. She didn't answer me. She just stared at me. I sat up in bed and she backed up a couple of steps. I asked her again if she was all right. She then turned and calmly walked out of the room and shut the door behind her. I was pretty confused by this situation. After a while, I was able to fall back asleep. I figured she was sleepwalking, but I didn't remember her ever mentioning it when we dated. The next morning, before I went to work, I told her what had happened in the night. She seemed very surprised and said I had to be joking. I asked her if she ever sleepwalked. She said that no, she did not sleepwalk and never had before. I just didn't know how else to explain what had happened. I thought maybe I was dreaming the whole thing, but it just seemed way too real, and I had never dreamed anything like that before. I just knew I was awake. The next night, I once again woke up in the night. This time, I sat up and looked at the end of my bed again. Nobody was there. I was relieved, and then I looked around the room. Then, I saw in my doorway Christine's head peeking around the corner, staring at me once again with a mad look on her face. She was just staring at me for a while. We made eye contact, and then she backed away. I sat there, just staring at the doorway for a while. After a couple of minutes, her head appeared again, just staring at me. Then I called out to her, and she once again backed away and shut the door. I didn't get much sleep for the rest of the night. Thankfully, that was the last night that she stayed at my place, and she left first thing in the morning. Before she left, I told her once again what had happened, and she seemed very surprised again. To this day, I have no idea what she was doing.